Just count down.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on our meeting related to the political situation in Armenia. So today's guests are Hayk Martirosyan, political scientist, Hayk Grigoryan, attorney, and the moderator, Sophia Badalyan. She's also a student at George Washington University studying international affairs and cross-cultural communication. She is also the president of the GW Armenian Student Association. Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening.
So the first question I will ask you, what's your take on the war against Armenia and its aftermath? Was it planned long before, and what are the main countries involved in? Mr. Martirosyan?
Well, what's the take? The take was this was a war in the making for 30 years almost. But this concerns only Azerbaijani side. Azerbaijani side was the only one that was preparing for the war. The Armenian side was doing nothing and being stupid and idiotic through all of the 30 years and the three regimes that succeeded each other. The main problem in the thinking is, and we are not talking about this in Armenia, unfortunately. The main problem was the mentality that Russia will not allow Azerbaijan to attack its closest ally. What happened was the exact opposite. Russia made a deal with Azerbaijan and Turkey and helped them regain control. I mean, I hate saying regain, I should say gain control, because Azerbaijan had control over those lands only for 70 years, not more, not ever before Soviet Bolshevik rule. So they gained control over Artsakh and even territories of the Soviet Armenian Republic that were in the Soviet Armenian Republic, thanks to Russian help and Russians allowing Azerbaijan and Turkish military forces take over the historic and legal Armenia. So this was the main problem. The second problem that was stemming from this one was the inherent systemic corruption in Armenia. And corruption never stopped, not even during this regime, the Pashinyan's regime, because there is a common acceptance, or there was before the war, that this regime is not corrupt. In my opinion, my deepest belief is this regime was the most corrupt one, but it was also the most deceptive one. So the corruption went on and on and on, and things were stolen from the army, finances were stolen, were embezzled, the budget of the country was wasted. But the most important thing is that the necessary military equipment, the military gear, the hardware was never purchased, especially under this regime, the current regime. Why? Because in my belief, and I have no doubt about it, absolutely no doubt about it, this regime did everything not to purchase the weapons, to have a weak army, an army that has a shifted balance in comparison with the Azerbaijani army that got its best gear and the most advanced military equipment during the years of 2019 and 2020. So this regime, that's a treasonous regime, did everything so that the Armenian army is not able to withstand the attack. Regardless this fact, the army fought, not the generals, but the army itself, the Armenian people fought, and then this plan B came into effect, which was to make everything so that the army units, most of the army units of the armed forces of Armenia do not participate in the fight, or so that the volunteers corps collapses, which actually happened because volunteers are never professional soldiers. They are not trained, they can't withstand the incessant attacks of military drones overhead. So this is what happened militarily. Politically, there was a strong will to lose the war, which may sound and seem absurd to somebody not familiar with the Armenian current realities, but that is a fact. And there was a huge and concerted effort to destroy the Armenian statehood from within, that was carried out very successfully by the Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and his criminal regime. This is what actually happened. And he actually started playing more in the Russian field than any Armenian leader before him ever. And also there is, I, as a participant of the so-called, as one of the leaders actually of the so-called revolution that we were doing, believing that democracy will come to Armenia, that national ideas will start prevailing in Armenia. I, analyzing the events that happened during those days and analyzing the behavior and the patterns of Nikol Pashinyan and his regime, starting from the very beginning, I came to the conclusion that he was installed by actually with the participation of Russia or with the allowance of Russia and by its real allies, true allies, Turkish and Azerbaijani governments, to have everything done the way it happened. And he's still staying in power to finalize the Turkish dream and to hand over the control of Armenia to Turkey territorially and politically inside the Armenian USSR territory to the Russian government. This is what's actually happening.
I think everyone will agree that the only party who is the loser of this war is Armenia. All other participants, even proxy participants such as Russia and Turkey, they won. Russia won military access to the region. So instead of UN peacekeepers, we have now Russian troops in Artsakh. We have Turkey troops in Artsakh under the fake cover of orientation or monitoring center in Aghdam. And we have Azerbaijan who gained, control of Armenian territories. So the only party who lost is Armenia, whereas Russia was considered our strategic ally, and the whole concept of our military independence was based during past 30 years was based on Russia being ally of Armenia. So that concept was in one day was destroyed. So the reality now is that we still continue to call us as a closest ally of Russia. But I want to make some general comparison to Ukraine and Georgia. When there was war between Georgia and Russia and the war between Ukrainians and Russians, Armenians used to say, especially Sarkisian regime, that our diplomacy is so good that, see what happened with that stupid Ukrainians, what happened with the stupid Georgians. They, went to West, they went to America or Europe, and they lost the territory. But what happened with us is the worst. We not only lost the territory, we also stay in the same, colonial rule of Russia. So that's the first, take that we can, emphasize today. The second is that our army that, when I say army, now I will be referring to the ruling class of the army, the generals, political and military governing bodies of the army. So we were under impression that our army is prepared for any sort of military conflict with Azeris. But the reality was that at least during past 5 years, Azerbaijan was heavily getting military equipment and weapons for modern warfare, whereas Armenia was only prepared for maybe end of 20th century's war, not for first century war. And the end result of that was more than 7,000 Armenian young soldiers being killed. And as far as my impression of how the world reacted to this conflict is that, of course, Turkey alone never would dare to interfere, especially through mercenaries and direct involvement in this conflict, because this area, Caucasus, is considered by global powers as a Russian influence area. So without Russians' agreement, Turkey would never interfere, and Azerbaijan would never attack in this scale, because we know during the past 30 years, every year or maybe every month, there is a small skirmishes between the parties. But full-scale war could happen only with Russians' permission and or advice. And the end goal, as we see now, when the protests starting coming up with the slogans of, uniting with Russia, etc., we can more clearly see the pretext of all these, messages, that what was the main goal, which is, if we compare with events of 1918 to 1920s, we will see that a Russian-Turkish pact or alliance again works against Armenian people, each side having its own interest, and with tragedy for Armenia, as it happened in the early 20th century.
Colleagues, I just want to remind you and emphasize that Armenian army was fighting against Azerbaijan army, against Turkey, and against own government, own generals. They didn't lose the war. They were betrayed. And you forgot to emphasize mercenaries fighting there. You forgot to emphasize chemical weapons they used against Armenian civilians and the army. So what do you think for future? Will we be allowed, is legal already afterwards, to use mercenaries, chemical weapons to solve territorial problems? What do you think?
Well, the problem here is that the truth, the righteousness lies within the powerful and the winners. Therefore, Turkish side doesn't give a damn about anybody's opinion. All they care about is their national interest and their national idea, which is the destruction. First step is the destruction of Armenia, and then the enlargement of the Turkic world and sort of a unification. And Armenia is a roadblock on that way, so it needs to be removed in their opinion, in their ideas. But the point here is that it's not that Armenia was fighting Turkey. Armenia was fighting Turkish military units and Turkish equipment, but Turkey as a country wasn't involved in the war using its whole military force. It was not a Turkish military operation. It was an Azerbaijani military operation with huge and very important use of Turkish actual military forces and Turkish military equipment, military hardware, notably the attack drones. And also the military advisors, Turkish military advisors, and Turkish communication systems, a lot. But it wasn't that the Turkish army was fighting. So there was a very good chance for Armenia, at least not to lose the war or to have minimal losses. What happened exactly was the betrayal you spoke already about. However, I need to emphasize one thing. There is no way Armenia can overcome this, and Armenia can get stronger or recover or get better military hardware and be able to defend the rest of it. And then, of course, there is the issue of liberating the lost territories that are part of the Republic of Armenia, according to all international documents. And we've spoken about this at length and a lot. previously. By itself, Armenia cannot regain power or cannot come to balance, create a balance of power with the Azerbaijani Turkish forces by itself. It also will never be able to do that with Russian help, because this all was a Russian plan to better their relationship with Turkey, their alliance with Azerbaijan. Therefore, they decided it's in their interest to donate part of Armenia, which is Artsakh, and the 7 liberated territories that have been part of Azerbaijani SSR, but not the first Azerbaijani Republic. Therefore, they were occupied by Bolsheviks and donated to communist Azerbaijan. And before that, all the historical documents, all the international documents prove that those territories were Armenian territories and they were occupied by Bolsheviks and then donated to Azerbaijan. So Armenia will not be able to do all of this with the help of Russia. Russia will not provide military gear. They will match the Turkish newest drones. For example, they started production of Akinci drones that are 2 or 3 times more powerful than the Bayraktars used in this military operation against Armenia. So they're basically invincible. Armenia will not be able to withstand that without external true military support. Who can provide that support? The West. There is a huge campaign in Armenia to discredit the West. Many agents of Russian interests inside Armenia are promoting the fake and dishonest idea that the West, notably they target the United Kingdom, of course they target the United States, of course they blame France for being so-called silence, while France twice, it's well-known, twice has offered on the highest level military help to Armenia to withstand Turkish attack. And Armenia has refused because Nikol Pashinyan had to carry out the orders of Azerbaijan, and because that was his way of betrayal. So the agents of Russian interest are promoting this idea that West was behind the losses of Armenia, not the Russia, while actually Russia enabled Azerbaijan. And to prove this, it's just enough to watch the 2 press conferences of the Russian leader, who openly, and I should say very honestly and very sincerely, said what the Russian position was during the war and even after the war, that Artsakh, with all the 7 surrounding liberated territories, do not belong to Armenia. They should have been so-called returned to Azerbaijan. This is what the Russian leadership said on the record in their press conferences. Therefore, it's extremely obvious what Lavrov's plan was, has been spoken at length. It's not a secret anymore. Therefore, Armenia has to find new allies. Now, with the Trump administration thankfully gone from Washington, we have the Biden administration, which is way smarter, which is getting rid of the isolationist policies of the Trump era, which is announcing that it will get involved again in international politics, which is already showing signs of support for Armenia. But I would like to stress one very important aspect here that we're not talking about again. This is extremely important in relations to the United States. The US government, the new administration, should never repeat the mistakes of even the very smart Obama administration that was considering Armenia as a region of, as a zone of utmost absolute influence of Russia, and that participating in political processes there would be fruitless. Now there is an absolutely new reality. Most of Armenians understand what happened. And of course, that is the reason why Russia is stirring up the country from within, from inside, even bringing people from Crimea in Russian military fatigues to lead some demonstrations and call for a unification of Armenia with Russia, which is the craziest idea. I mean, it's crazy even to unify, which country should I say, even with Australia, right? Even with any other country. I mean, who in their normal mind would discuss the absorption of their own country and the loss of sovereignty to another country, even the best ally? Nobody considers that in the world. But in Armenia, these processes are taking place because of Russian policies. Now, this new Biden administration should stop, or should never repeat, rather, the wrong policies of even Obama administration. And I'm not talking at all about Trump administration that never gave a damn about what's happening in Armenia. So Biden administration has to start thinking of how they can support the Armenian people, how they can offer something to the Armenian people and Armenia as a country. Despite the Armenian government's undeniable rejection that will come, that already has come, or that is still to come, right? So the government will always reject the American help as long as it's in power, this regime. But the United States government should not cease with its efforts, because but this time they have to come up with a concrete plan, with concrete offers for Armenia and the Armenian people. And that's the solution for the Armenian people, but not only the United States, the West in totality. Europe, which is of course politically not in the best place at this point and economically, but that doesn't matter. Europe still has capacity to withstand the threat that they see, the regional threat, and they are the natural allies of Armenia. This, however, doesn't mean that Armenia shall become enemy of the Russian state. No, that's not in Armenia's interest. Armenia should always have very good relations with Russia, but they have to be good relations. They shouldn't be relations or a relationship between a slave and a slave owner. That's the case right now. So it's possible to do. And by the way, the Russian political thought and Russian political system has always respected and dealt with respect only with countries and people who have shown signs of sovereignty, who have shown dignity. In that case, they have even supported those countries, not destroyed them. And take Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has conducted itself with dignity throughout 30 years. They have used Russia. They have shown Russia that they have an alternative to Russia, which was Turkey. The closer they got to Turkey, the more Russia assisted them to have them by its side. While Armenia behaved in a terribly indignified way, totally behaved like a slave, literally, gave up almost all the sovereignty. And the result is that Russia traded Armenia for pennies to gain Turkish alliance and Turkish economic participation in Russian economy and business deals, etc., etc. The rest of the story is very well known. This is what we should consider. And there is a way to recover, but that way may never be organically. It has to come through the Western, and not only Western. Armenia should also think about new type of alliances, new type of relationships with China, notably, with and also with the Gulf countries that are pretty powerful these days, that have big interest in this region, and some interest of some of these crucial players in the Gulf region coincide with the Armenian interests, and we should start exploring this. But again, nothing is going to be possible as long as this treasonous regime is in place. Unless this regime is removed, Armenia is going to be lost.
For me, it's not a surprise for Turkey to act, to use illegal means or unhuman means to conduct a war. Even in 20th century, we saw, how the Turkish army can take over Cyprus despite any, rules of international law, etc. So it shouldn't be surprising that they used chemical weapons, or they use people as a hostage to get leverage in negotiation, etc. So the most important lesson from the history that we need to take is that Armenia needs to be more powerful, less relying on outside source, on outside assistance. And it may sound simple, and it may sound, very, very simple, but the truth is, during past 30 years that we have so-called independence, we did very little to get even close to that goal. So always the discourse was and discussions was around West or Russia, etc. But the reality is that we lost a lot of time during past 30 years when Turkey wasn't so powerful, because Turkey started to become a regional power only during past 10 years or so. And how it started, they first started to go to West, expansion in Greece, and then south to Syria, and then none of that worked. And they figured, Armenia is the weakest spot to move forward with their nationalist ideas. But Armenia needs to concentrate right now on demographic issue, because population, we need increased population in Armenia. We need more professional army. We need more powerful economy, because without all these elements, you cannot have powerful army. You cannot be a player, even regional. And as Mr. Martirosyan mentioned, we should stop thinking that Russia is the only possible solution, that Russia is only foreign partner that we can have. This is not, Russia-oriented world. This is not only West, this is not only America. There is other countries, middleweight countries that Armenia can deal with and partner with. And I agree that Armenian government didn't have goal to win the war. I agree that there was internal treason. There was a program to implement Lavrov plan by Armenians' hand included. So this was multi-layer treason. So I also agree that any progress that we are talking for Armenians and Armenia cannot be achieved if this government of Nikol Pashinyan stays in the power, because it is complete untrue statement that Nikol Pashinyan is a Western-oriented political leader and anti-Russian, and that was the reason that we get the war. No, that's 100% inaccurate. He was Russian-oriented.
More than anyone.
He was Russian-oriented or Russian agent, political figure who was installed as a head of the government to implement Lavrov plan in Armenia. And the only way he could do that by killing 7,000 of Armenian soldiers and then declare to Armenians that I stopped the war and Russia is our ally, he helped us and he stopped the war. That was the whole story that we faced, and we need to take lesson from that.
Okay, in fact, there are mercenaries in the region. They are still existing in the region. So what is the implication from the perspective of Iran, Russia, Georgia, even for Armenia?
This is a very good question, but I would like to stress or add something. First of all, they are not mercenaries only. They are terrorists, first and foremost. Terrorists who are being paid for their terrorist participation in the warfare. So those terrorists, who are those terrorists? These are the terrorists in Turkish-controlled parts of northern Syria, notably the Afrin region, that has been ethnically cleansed from the Kurds and populated with Turkish elements or pro-Turkish Arab elements of Syria. Their business is war, and they are Islamic fundamentalists. They are Islamic terrorists. There is a lot of proof. It's a recognized fact by the international community and international organizations and foreign governments. And nobody questions this fact but Azerbaijan and Turkey themselves, who brought those terrorist mercenaries to fight against Armenian forces. We know very well that during the war, Iran made a statement once about the unacceptability of foreign terrorists, i.e. Sunni extremist Islamist terrorists' participation in the military conflict on their borders. But the Armenian side never, during the war, accepted the Iranian offers of help to fight Azerbaijanis under the umbrella of fighting at the same time the Sunni extremist fundamentalist Islamist terrorists that were fighting against Armenia. Therefore, when the war was purposefully lost on the Armenian side, the Iranian government suddenly decided that Armenia is not a factor anymore. Armenia is nothing anymore. It's not a player anymore. It's nothing. It's a zero. Therefore, they went on and congratulated Azerbaijani government for their victory, which means that they made a decision, a political decision that because Armenia is non-existent, basically, the most powerful player in Caucasus right now is Azerbaijan, so they have to deal with Azerbaijan because their main threat at this point, from the perspective of land intrusion and incursion, comes from the Azerbaijani side, not from any other side. But this is a different topic. So this is what comes to the issue of terrorist mercenaries. They are, of course, staying in Azerbaijan because many of them don't want to return to Afrin region of northern Syria because there is no business there. The economy has been collapsed. And here in occupied Artsakh territories, Nagorno-Karabakh territories, they feel pretty comfortable and they are being provided with housing, with land and everything. And the agricultural situation is way better than in northern Syria. Therefore, it's a very good environment for them to stay, which is also a threat to Iran, which is also a threat to Georgia. You mentioned Georgia. Georgia is a country that has seen a lot of difficulties, especially in the post-Soviet period. They are a multinational, multicultural country. And of course, having Islamic terrorists not far from its borders is a threat directed at Georgia as well. And I believe the Georgian authorities are pretty concerned as well, just like any other normal country. The only party that is not concerned, that is participating in installation of Islamic terrorists in the region is Azerbaijan with Turkey. Therefore, this is a true menace. But for any regular army, the land forces of terrorists of this scale, which is not a huge scale, the terrorists are not counting in hundreds of thousands in Artsakh now on the Azerbaijani side. They may be thousands, but not in hundreds of thousands. Therefore, they are not militarily a great threat for a fighting army, let's say the Armenian army in theory. However, the greatest threat is the further expansion of Turkish Azerbaijani forces into the Armenia proper, into the so-called Armenian USSR territories that many say are the internationally recognized Republic of Armenia, but no, the internationally recognized Republic of Armenia includes the occupied Artsakh and the formerly liberated 7 regions of Soviet Azerbaijan as well.
And so, Nakhichevan also.
Yeah, Nakhichevan also. Of course, Nakhichevan also, but Nakhichevan could be the second step after the liberation of the imminent liberation of at some point of lost Artsakh and etc. But that's a different topic at this point. So the main threat right now is the Armenian government itself that gifts for nothing the territories of the Republic of Armenia, even right now, to Azerbaijan, and the Turkish-Azerbaijani military preparations for the next campaign, that is inevitable, absolutely inevitable. But I guess we have some questions coming in. I saw Sophia flagging and willing to ask some questions.
And let's give a chance to Mr. Grigoryan if has something to say.
Yeah, very briefly, I think the mercenaries or terrorists currently in Azerbaijan mainly play the role of leverage for Turkish and Azeris in negotiations, in upcoming negotiations, because I think everyone will agree that nothing was resolved as of today in basically, because what we see, we only see the end of the active military campaign, but the negotiations, not only for the future status of the territories or Artsakh and future status of communications that everyone talks about, reopening railroad, etc. I think that mercenaries are going to be leveraged for Turkey against Iran and against Russia, as we see Iran's temper and Iran's, wording and Iran's position on Artsakh changed quite a bit since the beginning of the war. Now Iran doesn't talk about mercenaries. They are very happy with outcome. They are happy even with Turkey's presence in Artsakh. So they are kind of understanding who is who, and they wanted to play by the rules that Turkey and Russia have. So that's why mercenaries still there. They are not active, but they are there. And in the good time, when it's time to act, they will act against Iran and even against Russia. Because as I said, this was only first stage. The second stage very well can have many differences between even Russia and Turkey. And that's when the mercenaries can play some role.
Just a very, very small remark, if you don't object, for 1 minute only, please. What comes to Iran, I'd rather disagree with Mr. Grigoryan, because I think Iranians are using the diplomatic language in a way that shows that they are concerned, but they, as I mentioned, they are trying to gain even a closer relationship with Azerbaijan, because they are the winners, they are the players, the main players in the region at this point. So through this, they are trying to mitigate the risks for themselves. The imminent threat to Iranian territorial integrity regarding Iranian part of real, true, historic Adar-Badagan, which is pronounced Azerbaijan at this point, where Turkish-speaking Iranians are living, and who have some tendencies of, some of whom have some tendencies of dividing or separating their part and uniting with the current Republic of Azerbaijan. So in my opinion, Iran is trying to mitigate the risks. Iran, in my opinion, cannot and is not happy with the Turkish influence and Turkish presence in Artsakh, in the Armenian occupied territories that are occupied by Azerbaijan at this point. Iran cannot be happy with that. That's my belief. I think they are trying to mitigate the risks. So thank you, and let's take probably the questions. And Sophia, maybe we could take 2 or 3 questions at once, because I guess there are a few coming in.
Yeah, we have a number of questions, and I want to also reiterate that if anybody has any questions, to leave them in the Facebook group, in the chat, so that we can ask them and get to them. And I also hope to ask some questions from my perspective as a diasporan. And I know me and other students, some of my colleagues also have questions on this conflict. And I hope to maybe help clarify some of these things that we've been thinking about and ways that we can move forward and help in the future. But to address a question that a viewer has asked regarding the legality that we've been discussing, do you think the Minsk Group should be convinced to take this Armenian and Karabakh conflict to the International Court of Justice. Do you think the Minsk Group is the right party to take that? Or you may know there's also a group of Armenians planning to file a lawsuit in the International Court of Justice. Do you think this is feasible? Do you think this is will be helpful at all, considering a number of international laws have already been broken during this conflict and nobody has taken action? Do you think this lawsuit is something that is feasible or would be able to help? What are your thoughts on it?
What's the second question? Maybe
also related to the Minsk Group in general, their participation or lack thereof during this conflict. What do you think of their role and how they have or have not participated?
Okay, I probably shall answer, and then probably Mr. Grigoryan will answer. First of all, what comes to Minsk Group during the war, during the 44 days, in the first period of the war, I was for the non-recognition of the Minsk Group as a solution platform, because at that point I was convinced that Armenia can withstand the attack, and that the Minsk Group has failed in preventing Azerbaijan from committing the aggression they did. However, nobody could guess at that point that there is going to be treason taking place, that Armenia is going to be destroyed basically completely, and the Armenian army decimated from within because of the treason from within. Now, and also we should also note regarding the second question that Minsk Group is a wide group with a participation of many countries. Even Turkey is a member of the Minsk Group, but mostly these are the OSCE member states, most of them the Western European countries. However, the chairmanship of the Minsk Group, which we most often, which is most often mistaken for the Minsk Group itself, is consisting of three countries: the Russian Federation, the French Republic, and the United States of America. Russian Federation was essentially a non-visible party to the conflict on the side of Azerbaijan and Turkey. France was the only country that was supporting Armenia. The United States was, in essence, supporting Armenia morally. And we know that from Thomas O'Brien's famous press conference in Los Angeles in the last period of the 44-day war. However, the US, because of its administration, there was in turmoil, there was in scandals, there was in post-election period or pre-election period, was not interested in intervening because also it had this isolationist America first policy. Therefore, America was pretty passive and didn't do anything. But this doesn't mean that the group itself has failed. The group failed because one of its co-chairs of the three took part of took the side of Azerbaijan. The second player, France, was rejected by Armenia. Literally, the Armenian prime minister told to the French government, "Thank you, we don't need your help," right? And the third party was not able because of the administration, not because of the country. The administration was unable to intervene and didn't have much wish or willingness to intervene, or energy, or knowledge, or professionalism. That's why Minsk Group becomes extremely important at this point, because two key players, France and the United States, are willing to stop Turkish Azerbaijani expansion in the region, seeing it as a regional and international threat to their interests. Therefore, the interests of Armenia coincide with them. Russia is against them. But anything outside Minsk Group is going to be total loss for Armenia and defeat for Armenia. Now, what comes to the court issue? Armenians have this cult type of worship for the international justice, international court system. However, they have no clue, mostly Armenians in Armenia, that these systems don't work as they should. They don't function on the level they are supposed to. They don't always act as a very productive places to find justice or processes be solved, especially a conflict, a territorial conflict of such magnitude with such key players cannot, in my opinion, at this point, and I want to underscore, at this point, be resolved in any international court. This is an international relations issue. This is a diplomatic issue. This is also, first and foremost, a military issue. Therefore, the question should be resolved in the framework of Minsk Group with the active participation of two truly neutral parties that morally support Armenia, understanding that Armenia is a righteous party, but also understanding that it's in their interest as well not to let Armenia be swallowed by the Turkish world. Therefore, the Minsk Group is the best platform, and Russia shouldn't be ignored either, because it is the country, the only country that has, they call them peacekeeping forces. The Russian forces in Artsakh are not really peacekeeping because they are unable to keep the peace there. And we saw that through the abductions of the Armenian servicemen in Artsakh and through the loss of the Dizak region in the south of Nagorno-Karabakh so-called republic after the military forces were installed there. So they are representing the Russian Federation's strategic interests in the region, not conducting a truly 100% peacekeeping mission, even though, yes, we cannot deny it, some peacekeeping mission is being conducted. But they are the Russian military presence. They're Russian forces, not international or neutral peacekeeping forces in Artsakh. Therefore, Russia, as also the country that has huge influence, right now it's immense influence over Armenia, cannot and shall not be ignored. Armenia and the new authorities of Armenia that are still to come should deal with Russia with respect, but demand respect from Russia as well. Therefore, the answer is the solution at this point, this stage, lies within the Minsk Group.
Mr. Grigoryan.
Okay, I want to start with the Germany Chancellor Bismarck words that says that no land can be gained or no land issue can be resolved other than with iron and blood. So I can't remember or I can't imagine in history at any point that any country will get a land-related resolution by any court of justice. But it doesn't mean that these processes needs to be ignored. Legally, there needs to be action filed, but we need to understand those are not going to resolve land-related issues. They can resolve compensation issues. They can resolve some acknowledgement of specific, labeling specific things as we want them to be labeled, etc. As I know, such processes are now going on, and they need to be coordinated by government because they cannot be private, even though they can be private, but the political influence of these actions will be if they are managed and, organized by government. As far as second question about Minsk Group, we need to see the realities. The reality is that Russian government announced a few days ago that Turkey needs to be part of the resolution of Artsakh conflict, which means Russia as a Minsk Group co-chair ignores the existing format of Minsk Group and invites third party into resolution. And we need to also acknowledge that none of the co-chairs, France or America, reacted to that announcement as of today. And I agree with Mr. Martirosyan that America's passiveness was due to only Trump administration. It's not the policy of America right now. And I believe the future of Minsk Group is solely depends on America's actions, because France alone cannot save Minsk Group. They tried, they failed. France tried to offer their hand, tried to offer their solution, but Armenia ignored that. Russia and Turkey ignored that by actions, and America didn't act due to Trump's administration. My hope is that America will be more involved in Minsk Group, and they will be able to revive the Minsk Group. And at that time, the main issue will come as what is the international status of Russian troops in Artsakh? Because right now, by international law, Russian troops cannot have any legal support other than that November 9th document signed by 3 countries, and that's it. That's the only document that gives power to Russia to keep that troops there. But there is no international mandate for that troops. That's why we cannot call them peacekeepers. Of course, partially they do keep the peace, but we need to understand that that is against the principles that America announced. One of the government officials of United States announced during the war that there should be neutral peacekeepers, and neutral means they should not be parties from the conflicting countries, from the neighboring countries, and from the co-chairs, which means Russian troops by default cannot be peacekeepers because they are involved in the resolving of the issue. Party cannot keep the peace in the region where he is also involved in, to making decisions about that process. So this area is very gray right now. It's difficult to predict, and it's mainly the future of that will be mainly the resolution mainly will come from United States, because Russia and Turkey they already announced what their intentions are, and those intentions are against the United States interests. So we need to wait until America reacts.
So regarding American involvement, we have some other questions in the chat regarding alliances, and someone was wondering if it's possible for the United States to not give up on Armenia if Armenia's behaving as a Russian satellite still. Is it possible to create alliances? You mentioned in the Gulf states, with China. Someone also asked in the chat with India, if it's possible for us to enhance our diplomatic relations with India, also considering Greece recently announced the deepening of relations with India due to Pakistani involvement in Turkey and in the Eastern Mediterranean. Is it possible for us to build these alliances while still under the thumb of Russian, not even alliance, but control? And if not, how can we distance ourselves from Russia while keeping good relations, but having our own independence and sovereignty in these kinds of situations?
This is a very good question, actually. Not only Armenia or the United States could strengthen its relationship with Armenia, or Armenia with the United States and the rest of the players, but they should. They absolutely must, I shall say. Because there is no other way for Armenia than to explore new and more serious and more committed partners in order to recover, to rebuild its army, to keep its economy afloat, because the economy is sinking day by day. The country is slipping into utter poverty and economic destruction. And this government wasn't able to govern even in the pre-war period of the 2.5 years. What are we talking about right now? It's just going under. Now, the list of the countries is way larger that has been mentioned here. For example, Ethiopia is theoretically a potential great and powerful partner. May sound a bit strange for the Armenians who are not used to thinking outside of the box, but this is a very important destination for Armenian diplomatic relations and strategic relations. Ethiopia is the center of African Union. The African Union headquarters is in Addis Ababa. It has different aspects and interests in the region, and it understands some threats that are coming from the region. And historically and culturally, there are great ties that have been previously very powerful. Now, Egypt is another potential great partner. And Egypt, let's not forget, is a member of anti-Turkish military coalition. United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, even Kuwait, a lot of countries, of course, China, and yes, India is a very important player, and India probably will recognize the importance of of Armenia in the region and for its own interests because of the Pakistani heavy-duty involvement in this conflict. I mean, the same way many in Armenia are trying to blame the loss of the war on the Turkish participation, claiming that Turkey as a whole, as an army, as a complete army involvement in the conflict won the war, the same way we can claim that Pakistan won the war. But it wasn't Pakistan. Pakistan was participating in this war by its military and hardware aid to Azerbaijan as well. So India obviously recognizes, especially with the Modi government, which is a nationalist Hindu government, pretty much understanding the risks coming from Pakistan or Pakistani influence in the region. Therefore, India can and shall, and I believe should, get more involved with Armenia. Shall Armenia have a national government that's not at least treasonous? So the list is large. Serbia is another candidate of being a close ally. France, of course, is the main candidate of being an ally in Europe. I shall say that a very surprise candidate is the United Kingdom, which is being blackened left and right through concerted propaganda coming from abroad. But Britain is actually understanding or starting to understand the risks coming from Turkey as well. There is a political disdain for Azerbaijani regime in the UK, but traditionally Armenians have been made to believe that UK is probably #1 ally of Azerbaijan. Therefore, there is some disdain in the public towards the Downing Street policies or London, but that's a misconception that should be changed, and Armenia should start turning these countries into its partners. The ties with Iran should be revised in terms of understanding inside Armenia that Armenia should come to understanding that Iran is an important partner and that Iran will favor the party that wants to win. Therefore, Armenia should become the party that wants to win in order to regain the Iranian support. Armenia shall also start working towards Israel, because Israel was a very important player in this conflict, supplying Azerbaijan with hardware, notably drones, and some other equipment, and probably some intelligence as well. But Armenians should not blame Israel, because Armenia could have been a good ally or a good friend of Israel, and Armenia didn't use that opportunity while Azerbaijan jumped at it. And Azerbaijan had things to offer to Israel, and Israel got involved. But ignoring Israel, or even worse, blaming Israel incessantly and cursing Israel, that many parties in Armenia do, is stupid, because you're not gonna improve your position or your situation if you do that towards Israel. It's better to try to find a common ground with Israel. It's better to try to mitigate the risks and make Israel at least neutral towards Armenia. That's a very important issue. Therefore, the list of countries is pretty large, and it will look from a wider angle, the whole Europe, is the natural ally of Armenia at this point. That is why Europe is being incessantly discredited through special public relations campaigns and information campaigns inside Armenia. This should stop, and Armenian people should wake up and should understand what's going on, why it's happening, and what should be done.
Mr. Grigoryan?
Yes, I would like to tackle the question from the other side, other perspective. I think the question is not accurate when we say who other than Russia can be our ally, or who is willing to help us. The fact is that no one helps anyone just for helping. You need to position yourself as a country, not as a colony of Russia. Once you are a colony of someone, Russia is not important. Uh, even if we call ourselves a colony of Tanzania, still you don't give space to any other countries to work with you, because once you colony, your landlord is taking care of all your foreign affairs. So you need to start as a country to deal with your foreign affairs on your own as a sovereign country. And the fact remains that Turkey has more natural enemies than Armenia. That fact alone means that if Turkey, having so many enemies, still able to make some alliances or make some arrangements against Armenia, then Armenia, that basically other than Azerian Turks, we don't have any other enemy globally, then we should be able to work with other countries. But again, that no one wants to deal with the country or be a partner with the country who is weak, who is thinking of colonial, mentality, and who doesn't work to fight for its rights, fights for its interest. Uh, Even Israel, today we talk about Israel as, oh, they're powerful because they have America and Britain backing them. But that wasn't always the case. So let's remember how the Israel started. It started as a Britain mandate country. And then what happens after that? All Arab neighbor countries were against that newly formed country, and they start attacking. So can you imagine Armenia fighting 6-day war as Israel against absolutely all neighbors? Let's imagine Armenia being attacked by Iran, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, and fight 6 days and win all of them. Can you imagine that? I can guarantee you do that and you will be the first #1 partner of United States and United Kingdom. I can guarantee that. So let's make the country powerful. Let's make the people powerful. Let's make the mindset of not colonial mindset, but the sovereign citizens mindset. And then you will get the best that Israel has. So I think that's my perspective of the question. And as Mr. Martirosyan explained in the details, there are a big list of the countries that we can deal with. Historically, culturally, and in any other aspects. And that's not an issue. The issue is you need to have government that is national in its views, that has national interest in its mind and heart, and which doesn't want to be colonial puppet of the Russia or whatever countries it is, who doesn't want to be a puppet, who wants to be independent, international player. And then you will have all the doors open.
Unfortunately, I forgot to mention Greece, which is actually in actual conflict with Turkey and who's seeking for new partners. And Greece understands at this point, along with Cyprus, that they need to start getting involved in different parts of the world as well, where there are Turkish interests involved.
Yes, I mean, I need to repeat myself. So look at the Turkey on the map. Greece is enemy, Syria is enemy, Kurds are enemy, Iran is enemy. They're surrounded by enemy. You think Georgia is a good neighbor of Turkey? No. At the good time, when time comes, Georgia will be #1 enemy of Turkey. They have also, land issues, etc. So when we say, oh, Armenia is, we are poor, we can't do much because we are, all the neighbors are enemies. Look at the Turkey, all neighbors are enemies. Anti-Turkey alliance is Greece, France, Egypt, Syria, India. So all the countries that we mentioned and talked about, all these countries potentially are allies for Armenia.
There is a question that I would like to read and answer briefly, if Sophia doesn't object. It says, do you feel it would be helpful for Armenians in diaspora, especially heavily populated areas like Los Angeles, to start an armed force to be in the same mind to protect our borders? Well, first of all, there are no borders anymore. The borders are very fluid. Azerbaijanis do whatever they want. They drive into Armenian territories, into Armenian villages, they claim land. And Armenian government allows that to happen, and they put their flags and they declare it part of Azerbaijan. So in order to get from Yerevan to many parts of Syunik through Syunik, you pass through Armenian highways on which there are some signs. This is a ridiculous thing, but it's actually extremely tragic, where it says, welcome to Azerbaijan, welcome to Azerbaijan. I mean, they have created enclaves inside the Armenia proper, which is a pure and clear sign of internal treason, that the Armenian government has allowed this thing to happen. But now that's what comes to borders. The essential part here is that how will, let's say, the Los Angeles Armenians form military units? First of all, diaspora should think of returning to Armenia and repatriating into the Armenia and start living there. Because many Armenians in Armenia are demoralized and they want to leave the country. We need manpower. We need people with Western knowledge, know-how, skills going back there. That's number one. Number two, if there is an issue of creating military units, they should not be created, of course, inside the United States. Instead, they should be created inside Armenia in the under the auspices of the Armenian Armed Forces, but that will not and could not happen under this treasonous generals junta or under this treasonous government. But of course, the diasporans shall think of moving into the Armenia if they want to ever have an Armenia again.
At least, excuse me, at least do not support this government. At least from the diaspora, we are requiring. At least do not support this government.
Well, I am saying something that's being labeled as extreme by some, but that there are some, not everybody, of course, not the majority. The majority, I believe, supports what I say, and that's the following: be it in diaspora or be it inside Armenia proper, people who, after all of this, who after witnessing undeniable facts of undeniable treason, high treason by the government itself, continue supporting the government or believing them, are not simply morons or are not simply idiots. They are traitors themselves. They are collaborators. So they are agents of Turkish and Azerbaijani interests by proxy through the Armenian government. Those people are not diasporans anymore. They are not even Armenians anymore. They are not even Hayastansis anymore. They are, be it because of their stupidity or idiocy, they are traitors by proxy. I heard that families got, broken up because of this thing. Brothers and sisters stopped communicating with each other. It's okay. It's even better because we cannot have treasonous mindset or traitors inside our families. It's not dividing the nation. The nation is already divided. Those who are on the side of the enemy cannot be one of us. Be it hundreds or thousands of people, they are not Armenians. That's why we see people marching in the streets of Yerevan like yesterday with Russian flags demanding Armenia to be united with Russia. I mean, getting rid of the Armenian sovereignty, right? So because these people are not Armenians, they are foreign agents, be it Russian, be it whatever you want, Filipino. I mean, of course, there are no Filipino agents, but for example, right? Be it Martian or, from Venus, whatever that is, these people are not Armenians. They should not be having their place in our society. So yes, Mr. Hakobyan, those who support the government, they are not Armenians, and they are not entitled of speaking for Armenians or being part of the Armenian society. They should be rejected. This is a hardcore approach, but there is no other way out of the situation we are in than accepting this reality.
There is one question I want to read and answer, if I may. What would be a good time or time frame to break from Russia? Do the treaties with Russia forbid or prevent such a break? Are there any penalties that will be imposed on Armenia if this happens? This is a good question, and I want to emphasize one thing, that Russia is really scared to lose Armenia. Why? Because you will see how much efforts are thrown to the propaganda, to keep Armenians under the same mindset that if there is no Russia, Turkey will take over Armenia. I think this war showed the real face and the real nature of relationship between Russia and Armenia, as being not partners, but being colonial part of the Russia. And that means the following: we not only gave up our military air defense to Russia, not only we gave up our independence to be able to buy gas or gas from other countries other than Russia. Not only we gave up our railroad, our economy, our all our electric lines, everything that really supports economy. In other words, even if we want to modernize economy and grow our economy rapidly right now, we won't be able to do it unless we can break or stop some of these colonial agreements with the Russia, because you are not able to produce a product that will be priced in the manner that will go to the market in Europe if you have the highest price of the gas in Armenia. Armenia pays for Russian gas enormous amount. No other country pays such a high price. And gas, we know that 30-40% of products in Armenia, the price tag will be depending on the gas, expenses and costs. So the answer to this question is this: this war was really the turning point when we really can start taking real serious actions of breaking up with Russia, because we have not only legal and factual basis, but we have also moral. We can support our actions in all aspects, and the government will not do it. The current government, as I said, it's a puppet government of Russia, because I don't believe that revolution was a revolution in 2018. That was just a changing of powers from Sir Sargsyan to his puppet, and all four of the governors of Armenia were Russian puppets, just rulers of colonial Armenia. But this is a good start point, because the strategy opened up eyes for many Armenians. And I really think that anti-Russian population, percentage-wise, now is the highest during past 30 years. I think many people see this role that Russia played in defeating Armenia and killing all these young Armenian soldiers in war. And there are no penalties. It's obviously this is a political decision. And the starting point can be, if America get involved and insisting on Minsk Group format, Armenia needs to support that position and announce at some point that November 9 document was signed under duress, which is in legal terms means that any document that you sign under pressure of force or imminent force can be null and void. and that's a pure example of that. So November 9 agreement is not agreement. It's nothing more than ceasefire document or announcement, which can have no legal consequences for Armenia as far as borders, as far as any other concessions that Armenia made. So I think that's my answer to that question, which is a really good question that bothers many Armenians right now.
Back to you, Sophia.
Sophia?
Yeah, on the topic of the declaration, so do you think it's possible to pause or stop the implementation of the declaration? Is that something Armenians either in Armenia or diasporans can try to push?
That's a very good question. Can I also take another question, please, if there is any?
The following question I wanted to ask was regarding the mentality of Armenians in Armenia, and both of you have spoken to this to the effect that a lot of Armenians in Armenia historically have been under the impression that we need Russia, that we are reliant on them, and someone in the chat also said that most likely many Armenians don't really know why they think the way they do, because this is ingrained in our society, in our mentality as Armenians. And so my question personally is that in order to distance ourselves from Russia, I think the mentality of Armenians in Armenia needs to change drastically, and that will result in changing our political parties through elections. So focusing on the upcoming elections and elections moving forward, how can we mobilize Armenians in Armenia to elect the proper government that will properly lead Armenia in our best interest and not their personal interests, not in Russia's best interest, but for Armenians in Armenia? What are your thoughts on this, and how can we move forward in changing our mentality as Armenians to be fighting for what we deserve and what we need?
These are three great questions. Thank
Proper
you.
question. As long as I see the main problem, what we have a problem with our government, with no one else in general.
Yes, yes. Well, if not this government, Armenia would not have been defeated. It's a fact. It's undoubtable fact. Karvajar, which is the Kelbajar in Azerbaijani, would never be taken. It was impossible to take, but the Armenian government gave it up without one bullet fired, one shot fired. Anyway, back to Sophia's questions. Number one, is it possible to get rid of the document and recall the traitors in chief's signature from that? Yes, absolutely. But this question has two parts. Now, why yes? Because it is titled statement or announcement, right? Հայտարարություն. Why հայտարարություն? Because otherwise any name, an agreement, a treaty, whatever that is, would have had a way higher status of in terms of international relations, and it would have been an international document of the highest degree because it concerns lands, war resolution, peace issues, etc., etc. Now, that is why deceptively it was called a statement or announcement. But in human history, or international relations history, there has never been one single case when land has been given, huge chunks of historic and legal land have been given to the enemy country with an announcement. That's why many call this a capitulation paper document, but it's not even a capitulation document. It's a document about, it's a proof or a proof of state treason by the Armenian government. That's what it is, basically. It is a promise to give everything to Azerbaijan. And the fact that there is not once a line mentioned in the statement about the prisoners of war, Armenians, and there is no dateline, there is no deadline, there is nothing about that. And Azerbaijanis keep up to 200 POWs at this point. They haven't returned them, while Armenia has returned everything and everybody at once, even two terrorists who were convicted killers who killed an Armenian boy a couple of years ago in Karvajar region. And Armenia gave them back happily, not Armenia, the Armenian government. Therefore, this document is illegal. While if it was a document of a higher degree, let's say a treaty, that document should have been ratified by the Parliament of Armenia, by the parliaments of the two parties, at least two parties, and should have been confirmed by the Constitutional Court of Armenia according to legal and state procedures and state legislation. These things have not been done, and that is the purpose why the document has been called a statement. Now the second part of the answer. What are the implications of annulling the document? Of course, there will be huge pressure from Russia. There will be huge threats coming from Azerbaijan and Turkey. But Armenia can withstand those things if Armenia has trustworthy allies, extra allies, new allies, if Armenia stands on its feet, if Armenia makes steps at least towards standing on its feet, because allies can provide some serious and true protection against future incursions if Armenia makes steps towards that direction. Therefore, without having the army completely rebuilt, it is possible to withstand the pressure. Now, what will Russia do in that case? Russia will be unhappy, but I mean, what's gonna Russia do more if you have new allies, right? The main problem right now are not even one of the gravest and one of the most important issues, that is the issue of POWs. The main because that issue may be and most probably will be resolved in a time. But the gravest, the heaviest, the most important historically and politically question and issue is the issue of communications that the Armenian treasonous regime is trying to sell to the people as a solution for many problems. But that's a solution for the Turkish national idea to reunify Turkey with the Turkic world, or to unify rather. And Armenia gives a corridor for that becomes a regional and international threat to every single player in the region, but Turkey and Azerbaijan. And the second, it's the death sentence to Armenia itself that the Armenian government has signed. Therefore, the document should be, the signature should be recalled. And Mr. Grigoryan mentioned that it was signed under duress. Therefore, it is void and null. And it is possible to recall, and everything is possible in politics if you are willing to take risks, if you have brains, if you have commitment, and if you are truly patriotic, not patriotic on the levels of words. Now, the second question was, would you mind reminding very briefly, Sophia? What was the second question?
So the second question was more related to the mentality of Armenians in Armenia and how we can move forward.
Thank you. And then you'll remind me the third question if you don't mind. So exactly, that's a very, very good point, an excellent point. The Armenian mentality has been, and that has been the result of almost 100 years of brainwashing, especially during Soviet times, and especially post-Soviet times, that if not Russia, Armenia will be eaten, will be swallowed by Turkey. Therefore, the expression in Armenian has been either the Turks' sword or yataghan, or the Russians' sapog, or the Russians' boot. So it depends on which one you prefer kissing, the Turkish sword or the Russian boot. So the Armenians have preferred always to kiss the Russian boot rather than the Turkish sword. And the mentality has never accepted the case that why should you kiss anything at all? You can hold your head up and, shake hands, not kiss boots or swords or something else. But the interesting thing is that mentality should have been collapsed by now, because we saw that Russia was our own ally, our only ally, and we had no other allies because also of Russian pressure that forbid us from having or gaining any other serious allies. And look what happened. Russia gave Armenia to Turkey. And now is bringing in Turkey. They are opening a Turkish-Russian monitoring center in so-called territories of Azerbaijan that are, of course, Armenia, in Akna, which is Aghdam, and Turkish forces are there now officially. And Russia is, like Mr. Grigoryan mentioned, is inviting Turkey to take part in the diplomatic, so-called diplomatic solution of the conflict when Turkey was a party of the conflict. Therefore, I'm not speaking something against Russia. I'm stating the facts. And the fact is that Russia, and I should underscore this, mistakenly, because it's against their own interests as well, but they don't understand that. And we shouldn't expect them to understand what's good for them or what's bad. We should accept what their understanding is. We should accept the fact. The matter of the fact is they see Turkey as their ally against the West and as a supporter of their economy. Now, Armenians should understand that we already lost what we could lose. Now there is the second part of the fear that's being instilled, that's being implemented from Russia inside Armenia, saying that, oh, you're going to lose now Yerevan. So let's go and enter into Russian Federation, or let's create a unified country with Russia, and that will save us. How will that save us? First of all, I'm not sure Russia wants us inside Russia. They want Armenia as type of a colony to be able to trade with Armenian lands with Turkey. Therefore, we lost whatever we could lose. Now, what other players are there that don't want Armenia to vanish because that's a barrier for them? Those powers and countries we spoke about already, right? Therefore, Armenians should break up with a stupid idea that if not Russia, or Russia came and saved us. Excuse me, they were observing the war for 44 days, coming up with ridiculous excuses that Artsakh is not Armenia, that Armenian forces are not fighting. I mean, things happen that I'm not going to talk about all of those things here because we don't have enough time for that here. But I will touch on these topics later on. But the fact is they were observing, and then they were presenting us with the conditions put up by Turkey and Azerbaijan. They were forcing us to accept them. When Pashinyan didn't accept for his own reasons, not to seem or not to be blasted as a foreign agent, as a Turkish agent in Armenia, when Armenia refused, Azerbaijanis continued on pushing forward. And Russia was observing even that. And then when Pashinyan gifted Shushi through treason, just gave it up to Azerbaijan, Russia immediately pushed in and installed its forces, claiming that they saved Armenia. No, they saved the little that was left of Artsakh to gain a foothold and to gain a military base in Artsakh. Therefore, they didn't save us. They actually destroyed us, and they won something in return. So now you see Russian flags all over Artsakh, or what's left of Artsakh, the 15 or 25% of what used to be Artsakh. Now, it is very possible to do these things. You just wake up one day with a normal government that's not consisting of traitors and unprofessional, bastards. There is no other word for those people. And you just pursue your own national interest. That is a multi-vector, multi-directional, omnidirectional foreign policy. That's, again, not making Russia an enemy, but also is explaining to Russia that Armenia has its own interests that do not always coincide with ideas of Russian-Turkish friendship. Now, what was the third part of the question that you asked, Sophia?
If I may, I want to just.
I would say let's let Mr. Grigoryan answer first, and then I'll ask
subject.
another series of questions.
Okay.
On this subject, I wanted just to, answer with the questions. So, if Russia is so good and Europe is so bad, why Turkey wants to become member of European Union not be, partner with Russia. Can anyone who is supporting Russian, side of this story, can they explain why Latvia, Estonia, and other countries that break up with the Russia, did they become worse countries or better countries after that breakup? Did Georgia become worse or better? Did Ukraine become worse or better? Or when we say we only have one ally and that's Russia, we cannot go against Russia because if we go, things will happen. Then how Turkey is partnering with Ukraine, who is fighting against Russia, and Russia partnering with Turkey to gain control of Armenia. So if all these questions are asked and answered, people will see, how it is flexible in the modern world, and how the international, relationship work, and how and we just need to look at the countries who are partnering with Russia, and we have all the answers. What are the countries that are partnering with the Russia? Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and that's it. And Armenia, even Belarus, that is it's blood-related country to Russia. They even don't want to
Well,
go with
Turkmenistan
union.
doesn't partner with Russia. Turkmenistan is a very independent country.
Right.
They
Okay.
sell gas to
Yeah.
Russia. Yeah. Not even
Kazakhstan.
Uzbekistan.
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan acts as a very, very independent player, and they are trying to distance themselves from Russia. Even Kazakhstan.
Even Belarus, that is
Yeah.
blood-related country, they don't even want to be in union with Russia. So I don't see how this propaganda is supported, but people still believe in that. But once go into details and ask questions why, and can you show example of good relation, good partnering with Russia, you will see there is none.
Also, Abkhazia and South Ossetia have become de facto, in fact, parts of Russia. Look what state they are in. They are in dire state. Russia doesn't really take care of them, and they got detached from Georgia. Do they enjoy a huge economic boom or what?
Absolutely.
Of course not. Of course
Absolutely.
not. Now, Armenia was the only and the most devoted, slavishly devoted partner of Russia, voting against everything in UN that was that was against Russia, and everything that was Russia promoting, Armenia was voting for it. Now, what did Armenia gain? What did Armenia gain? Armenia lost the war. Russia announced on the highest level, and this is not a hearsay, this is a fact, documented on television, in YouTube. On the highest level, Russia announced that Artsakh, i.e. Nagorno-Karabakh, so-called Nagorno-Karabakh, with the 7 Armenian territories that were part of Soviet Azerbaijan, should be given to Azerbaijan. And President Putin even said, while signing the so-called announcement, there is a footage where he says, "Why should I read this document? I wrote it myself." I mean, of course, he didn't write it solely by himself, but it was written by himself, and of course by Azerbaijani leader Aliyev. Now, I mean, whose side is Russia? Who's supporting Russia in all of this? Did they support Armenia? I mean, what is Armenia going to be winning by becoming a unified state with Russia? It's going to be losing even more, or giving more control to Russia, or thinking that there is no way out. Of course there is a way out. I mean, how many colonies have gained their independence? How many empires have fallen and destroyed the colonies under them? I mean,
and Armenia was
dreams of becoming a colony in this day and age. Only Armenians, some Armenians, not all, not everybody, dream of becoming a colony and becoming a slave to somebody, thinking that the slave owner will defend the slaves against its own partners. I mean, the slave owners don't defend their slaves against their own partners, equal partners. I mean, this is the utmost stupidity that we should get rid of. And unfortunately, I have to say this too. I know so many American Armenians, I mean, Armenian Americans living in America for the longest time, collecting benefits from the US government, who ferociously support the idea of Armenia getting even closer with Russia. I mean, this is such a shame and such a level of stupidity and idiocy that I can't find words to describe it. I mean, this is a national tragedy, I should say. Armenia should not become enemies with Russia. Armenia should not say, Russia, you have absolutely nothing to do in here. No, Armenia should say, listen, dear friend Russia, either you support your ally, you truly support your ally, or you really pick your allies, or if you're, and most probably you're unable to do that, from this point on, we shall find partners, new partners who will support and defend us and with whom we will feel safe. That's what Armenia shall do. And that's the only solution at this point.
Before the next question from Sophia, I just want to emphasize the fact that the first time during like 250 years, Turkish army existing next to river Arax. So this is new status quo. It never happened before. It will change all strategy of the region. Will West, like US, France, all happen that? What do you think?
Hayk?
Mr. Grigoryan.
Yes. So I want to address two questions, and I will return to that question in the context of the thing. There is one question about Armenia becoming a nuclear power. This is very important question, and I think many of us thought about it, and many can think about it as an illusion. You know, the world wouldn't allow us to do it. You know, etc., etc. But I think that's a real deal, and with increasing Turkish presence in the region, our only hope is our strengths. So in other words, we cannot really rely on any foreign, foreign aid. Yes, I agree that, we need to change foreign policy from Russia to West, etc. That's more progressive, that will lead us to, development and progress. But again, when time comes to fight, no one else in the world will fight for you, for anyone. There is no such thing in history and in politics that some country will fight for another. Even the closest allies, the partners, the blooded countries won't do it. So we need to really concentrate on one question: how to deter Turkey from future aggressions against Armenia. And I see the development of nuclear weapon as part of it. It doesn't mean you will get the weapon, instantly. But I think Armenia needs to take this issue to the highest level in international arena and start presenting it as follows. Hey, international, community, we have this aggressor state. Everyone will agree it's aggressor, because it's not only Armenia that suffers from that aggression, right? Libya, Egypt, Greece, Syria, Kurdistan, Iran, everyone, right? Once you take this issue that you need to face with this country, you can easily get, arguments for how you can defend yourself against country that is 40 times bigger by population and 10 or 20 times bigger as a country. And we do have the potential of developing this weapon, and there is many variances of this weapon, but we need to get some basic we need to start some basic to do some basic developments towards that, which can really help us to restructure our defense. And the next question that is very interesting and really on point is, will it be a solution if 50,000, for example, Armenians from diaspora return to Armenia and for months or two and will they change anything? I believe they will. And I know that the law will not allow people, even if they are citizens, but they didn't live in Armenia for a period of time, to participate in election, etc. But still, that quantity of people, 50,000 or more, will definitely change the balance of powers as far as in internal relations. Because what we have right now in political arena in Armenia is we have Sarkisyan and Kocharyan, all the previous regimes, and we have Nikol and Levon Terpetrosyan, that so-called peace or Turkish lobbying political, political powers, and we have this more Russian-oriented, more corruption-oriented political parties. So we have these two different powers, but we don't have the third solution, which is national solution, which we need to unify all that national powers who have the same value, who share the same vision for Armenia, and we need that new blood, from fresh blood from diaspora, to fuel that national movement. That's the only solution as I see it right now.
May I say a few words regarding what has been said? My take on the nuclear issue is a bit different. I am more than convinced that that's not an option for Armenia. Unfortunately, that's not an option, but that's a fact. That's a matter of fact. Why? I shall explain. Because first of all, being a member of the nuclear club is a very exclusive thing. The countries that are in that club, the most notable members are, of course, Russia, the United Kingdom, France, China, and of course, India and Pakistan. They don't want any new countries inside the club. Way more powerful countries cannot gain their own nuclear weapons because, again, because of this restrictive approach internationally. Nuclear weapon is an extremely powerful thing, and it's also playing a very big political part in who possesses what in this world, or who may be attacked, who may not. For example, Israel has developed its nuclear weapon based on US technologies, but it is believed by many specialists that the technologies were obtained by Israeli special services for Israel. And Israel had the capability, the technical capability to do that. And to this day, Israel doesn't acknowledge that it owns nuclear weapons. Why it doesn't? Because no matter whether USA, doesn't matter whether USA supports Israel, is the closest ally, and tolerates Israel having the nuclear weapon or not, the international community or the club of the nuclear states will not allow new countries in. For example, there have been reports recently that Saudi Arabia has a deal, a backdoor deal with Pakistan to use the Pakistani nuclear weapons for its own purposes whenever such need shall arise. The same way, there are very brand new reports that Turkey has cut a similar deal with Pakistan, but these countries do not develop nuclear weapons, at least openly. And we know what the situation with Iran is. Of course, Iran is a foe of the West. That's why the pressure is so strong on Iran. But we should understand that neither technologically, nor financially, nor politically, we cannot obtain nuclear weapons. But there are, of course, types of nuclear weapons. There is also the dirty bomb, and Armenia has the materials for that. But then the question comes, let's say Armenia creates a dirty bomb, which is not a big deal, which is not a difficult thing for a country that possesses nuclear waste from peaceful nuclear technologies that Armenia has because of the Metsamor nuclear plant. But then what happens if you use it? If you use it, that invokes a whole new cascade of reaction from the world, because Nobody wants to see a state actor or even a non-state actor, even more. A
I think
non-state
that's
actor
the
use the
possession of it,
bomb.
the deterrent, not the use of it. Just
I
possession.
know, but if you possess a dirty bomb, then it's not going to be a big problem for Turkey to obtain it and to announce it, and to hand it over to Azerbaijan and announce it. Then you take it to a brand new level, but then they will make you the pariah in the eyes of the international community. I understand that possession is very important, but I don't think that's gonna be much helpful. What's gonna help Armenia is to gain new technologically advanced technologies, anti-drone technologies, to gain its new drone technologies. And by the way, the drone warfare that we saw in Artsakh war that was brand new in the world, and now many armies are referring to that case and buying new weapons, new drones, and new anti-drone technologies, has already, during these 2-3 months, turned into an old technology. Now there are the drone swarms that are almost invincible, like 200, 300, 1,000, 10,000 drones, small, tiny drones coming at you that are rockets or bombs by themselves. And there are no counter weapons to those things. And Turkey is developing those things again. Turkey is the world leader of drone production at this point. Even more, I believe, than the United States or Israel, because the United States and Israel produce heavy-duty, very serious drones that have very powerful capabilities, but those capabilities are turning them at the same time into heavy weapons that are not easily usable and are easily traceable.
Excuse
While
me,
the
just
Turkish
one note.
technologies are very light.
I think China is developed that.
Exactly. That is why I'm saying that Armenia shall partner with this kind of powers like China that has huge interest in this region, and people don't talk about this. China has struck a silent deal with Turkey regarding Xinjiang. So Turkey doesn't interfere, at least openly, in Chinese internal affairs regarding the problems inside its Xinjiang region populated by Uyghurs, who are the historical ancestors of the current Turks. And Turkey has great interest in Xinjiang. But China is a very smart country. They understand that the deal with the Turkey has a very short-living, very short period lifetime. It's going to expire. Turkey will never cease on dreaming about reuniting the Turkic people that are stretching from Turkey through Azerbaijan up to China. Therefore, China, of course, understands that the only bottleneck on the way of the Turkish expansion is Armenia, and that bottleneck is being eliminated at this point, especially through this painful and shameful paper of document of capitulation through which the Turkic world is getting reunified and which shall be cancelled by the new Armenian government, non-treasonous government. Therefore, these new technologies can be obtained through China, through other different countries, and this can be the savior of the situation for Armenia. There is no other way out. Of course, nuclear issue is a very tricky one and a very complex one. And also, Sophia, would you please give us the next question so that I answer it once and then pass the word to Mr. Grigoryan again?
Well, I wanted to ask a couple more questions on the basis of defense and military. We have a question regarding the Russian and Turkish defense ministers just implemented this joint monitoring post in Akdam, and someone asked, if there is a Russian-Turkish alliance, why does Russia need a base in Armenia when Turkey wants Armenia's destruction? What's the point? What's the use of such a base?
Well, Turkey wants the destruction of Syria as well. Turkey wants the destruction of every single neighbor they have. Still, Russia wanted, got, and is expanding its bases inside Syria, right? And that's happening as we speak right now as well. Why is that? Because having a military base for Russia is a leverage internationally. It's a power point. It's a foothold that is very important from Russian perspective. And it's also a countermeasure towards what Russia sees as Western expansion in the world, in the region, and Russia wants to be to stay a player, to mitigate its losses in diplomatic arena, in even military arena, and especially in economic arena, because Russia is in dire situation economically. So they are trying to counterbalance it with a military expansion in the region. Doesn't matter whether they partner with Turkey or they will at some point become enemies with Turkey. They will be needing military bases in every single country where they can, and where the country will be slavish enough to accept more Russian bases. I think one Russian base in Armenia is more than enough, and it's being paid for by the Armenian people, which is a ridiculous and unprecedented thing in the world history. Armenians are paying for the Russian bases expenses. And we should understand that Russian-Turkish alliance is a very, very real thing. It is happening until or unless that alliance crumbles. Russia will trade Armenian lands and Armenian interests with the Turkey for its own benefit. Therefore, either Russia shall understand that that policy should stop and Russia should become a true and respectful partner of Armenia, or Armenia shall seek and find, and Armenia shall find some additional, very strong, very powerful new partners with whom it shall get closer and closer, and with whom it should cooperate politically, militarily, and diplomatically even more. But unfortunately, we are seeing the opposite process. The so-called opposition, which is not the opposition, it's only part of the opposition field, the so-called 17 parties, they are talking more and more, and especially the second president of Armenia, Robert Kocharyan, is talking now about more and more integration with Russia, which means becoming more and more a heavy-duty Russian colony. And that means that Armenia will not be getting a chance if they ever, God forbid, return to power. Armenia will never get another chance of recovering itself with the new partnerships with different countries, both in Gulf area, through the Far East and the West. Therefore, this is a serious issue. That's why Armenia needs a national government, a government that that carries national ideology, that is a truly patriotic government. And there is just one political power inside Armenia, and that's the National Democratic Access, which is a group of people, of totally independent people, and a few independent parties that have united around the ideas of national, not nationalistic, I want to underscore this, but of national interests and national values, and which is the only truly powerful, patriotic, uncorrupt political power inside Armenia at this point.
And before moving on, I also want to ask another question on this topic. Someone asked about the presence of Islamic extremists in the region that have been a threat and are currently a threat still to Armenia. But they asked, do you think that these same parties can possibly be a benefit to Armenia in the future by destabilizing Azerbaijan and Iran?
I shall answer this, and then Mr. Grigoryan, I will pass the word to Mr. Grigoryan if you don't object. That's a very interesting and a very smart question. Of course, we know that the Islamic terrorists always turn on their masters. And considering the fact that part of Azerbaijan is getting smaller and smaller, but that part is still powerful, is Shia. Therefore, the Sunni extremists hate them. And also because they are foreign elements, they are not Turkic people, or part of them only is Turkic people. So that will create tension with the time, and Islamic terrorists always turn on their masters. That's what the history shows. And destabilizing Azerbaijan is, of course, in Armenia's and Armenians' interest. But to rely on that, I don't think should be the main strategy of Armenia, because that would mean doing nothing. More destabilizing factor are the ethnic minorities of Azerbaijan, who have been betrayed by the first leader of the Armenia, who was the first leader of the country. when the Talish Muhan Republic was established, declared its independence from Azerbaijan during the first Artsakh War, and they were expecting Armenian forces to come to their aid so that they could secede from Azerbaijan, and Armenian forces didn't go there because the leadership forbid them to do that. Now, the Talish have already assimilated greatly, but they still suffer oppression from the Baku regime, ethnic oppression and assimilation. The same is going on with Lezgins. If Armenia had some national ideas and ideology of how to destabilize Azerbaijan from within, that should have been for the past 30 years and even now work with Talish people. But Armenia refused to grant political asylum and did a pro-Azerbaijani step actually a year ago. This government, Nikol Pashinyan's treasonous government, with its foreign moron, stupid idiot foreign minister Zorab Mnatsakanyan, who refused Talish leader, the intellectual and their cultural icon, Fakhruddin Abozadeh, gain asylum in Armenia. And what happened? He was sheltering in Russia, and Russian authorities arrested him, handed over to Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijani government killed him, literally killed him in Baku prison during this war, during the 44-day war. Therefore, that is the true destabilizing factor, not really the Islamic terrorists, even though they can become and they will become a factor as well, but Armenia cannot work with them in no case, because they are terrorists anyway, and no country should work, no normal country should work with terrorists, especially Armenia. They will do their job by themselves, but relying on that factor is not going to be a wise or far-sighted policy.
Yes, I will agree on this second question with Mr. Martirosyan. They're paid, warriors, so there is not much you can rely on them. As far as the first question, it was about the role of the
monitoring post.
Say again?
The monitoring post.
Yes.
The monitoring post.
The monitoring post. As you know, Turkey has its foreign policy. Even right now, they are working with Russia in Artsakh, but they are fighting in Syria. They were some tension in Libya. Turkey supports Ukraine, which is adversary of Russia in these days. So basically, that doesn't mean global partnership between Russia and Turkey. What it means is, as it happens in many occasions during the history, you know that the Russia and Turkey fight many wars during few centuries, and each time, when Russia gains some territories in Caucasus and in Balkans, they always make a trade. They let's say they took over Bulgaria, and they make concessions in Caucasus, like Armenian lands. Then they conquered Greece, they keep Greece, they decided to return Armenian lands, etc. So that happens all the time, and as the history shows, it doesn't mean anything. Turks and Russians, they can be partners in one region and enemies in another region. That's a true nature of international relations, and they both work on the principles of international relationship, that no one has enemies forever, and no one has partners forever, or allies forever. So the same, we need to realize the same, that we cannot just fix Russia as a forever ally and just don't ask questions, don't analyze the actions that Russia takes against Armenia, etc. So that post has limited time, a limited life, and limited scope of a limited purpose. So once America get involved in within Minsk Group in this conflict, then I think many things will change. And one of them is going to be that monitoring center, because as I said, that monitoring center has no legal rights other than announcement of November 9, which was signed by only one member of Minsk Group and has no international backup.
One thing, if you don't object, uh, probably there are no permanent friends, as the famous saying goes. Probably, I wouldn't agree 100%, but that's the case in some cases. But there are permanent enemies, unfortunately, in this world. And Armenia is one of the countries that has a permanent enemy and always will have that enemy. And that's Turkey and the Turkish national ideology, because those people have been created, have been formed as a people and as a state and statehood on the idea of destruction of their neighbors or of conquest. The country itself has been created thanks to conquests, bloody conquests. First, the whole region, and then they have finalized it with Constantinople, turned it into Istanbul in 1453 through genius military tactics and technique and campaign. They have continued doing that. They have gained control over Balkans. They have lost control over Balkans. They are trying to regain control over Balkans. They've expanded into the Arab world. They are expanding right now into Africa. They want to go back through the lands through which they passed. So Turkish people are very determined, and the Turkish national ideology is conquest. And it's an incessant national ideology. Unfortunately, in the West, many, even the scholars, do not understand this, or they have been brainwashed with some, amateur ideas of peaceful coexistence with powers that are always and ever expanding powers because of their core ideology. But the matter of the fact is, the first target for Armenia has always been and always will be for Turkey, Armenia. So Armenia's permanent and eternal enemy is Turkey. The same goes, let's say, between Israelis and some of their neighbors, because some of their neighbors or even non-state actors are going to be the permanent enemies of Israel. And Israelis, in difference to Armenians, understand that very clearly because they are smart. They know this thing. So therefore, we should understand that we can have different allies in different periods in history, but the enemy is going to be always, at least one enemy is going to always be there. And that enemy is going to be the eternal enemy. And that enemy is taking over, by the way, at this point. There is another question of one sentence that I see that's addressed directly to me, and I want to read it and I want to answer it. Otherwise, they will claim I evaded or avoided that question. And it reads, Hayk, are you a globalist? Can you clarify this? Okay, I will ask a counter question. What is a globalist? Do you have slightest idea what that is? Well, I have a surprise for our listeners and viewers. Anybody who utters the word globalist in this kind of context is a conspiracy theorist, and I have no respect for any conspiracy theory. That's an intellectual challenge at this point that's spreading like a total virus in the Armenian brains that are catching on these catchy words from different conspiracy theories. Now the threat is Bill Gates. Too many, morons out there. The threat is the globalism. The threat is that. The threat is that. And nobody sees the true threats. So there is always somebody to blame, right? So one of those terms that's being thrown around as a cheap piece of coin is the globalism or globalist. No, I am not a globalist because I know what globalism is, but that's a totally different thing than what people asking these kind of questions think that it is. I am a political scientist. I believe in an interconnected world because that is the reality. By the way, I want to underscore that Armenians are the most globalistic people in the world. because Armenians have been around the globe for centuries. They have traded. Armenia has one of the two largest diasporas in the world, proportional to its homeland population, of course, not in absolute numbers, because probably the Chinese diaspora in absolute numbers is larger. But Armenians have been the messengers of the true globalism through the ages. The means of communication that we are using right now to address our listeners and viewers, internet, is the main tool of the globalization, not globalism, of course. So, you know, these kind of questions are utterly stupid, and I have no respect for the ideas that are floating around that are so cheap that would have been ridiculous if they wouldn't spread like a deadly virus. I'm not a globalist, and I don't think there are true globalists around, or there are globalists in Armenia, or that people who many conspiracy theories claim are globalists are globalists. Globalism is a totally different thing. Open the dictionaries, open the political science books and handbooks, and try to discover or explore what it truly is. Um, Therefore, no, I'm a person who tries to see the realities, who tries to analyze the realities, who is ethnically an Armenian, who cares about Armenian people's fate and what's awaiting Armenian people, and who values the Armenian culture extremely much. And what does globalism has to do with all of this, or with us, or with any of us? I mean, come on, please, have some respect for yourselves. That
Sophia, any questions?
Yeah, so before I move on to some of my personal questions, there's one in the chat that somebody left that says, related to Azerbaijan and their diplomatic relations, unlike Armenia, it seems to be that Azerbaijan has kept its relations decent with its neighbors. With Russia, it continues trade, even though publicly it has humiliated Russia. And recently, Azerbaijan is removing all soldiers that have ties with Russia or relatives living in Russia. It also has kept good ties with Iran, even though it's given Israel complete access to Iran from its borders. But Iran was so worried when Armenia opened an embassy in Israel. So what has given Azerbaijan this much leverage in playing such successful diplomacy?
I will answer in one sentence, and then let Mr. Grigoryan answer. Dignity. That's called dignity in international politics, that independence policy and politics, and that's what has given Azerbaijan all the leverage and all the good fortune and fate that they got.
I think the victory is not Azerbaijan's victory, and I don't think that the statement the listener makes is 100% accurate. I don't think Azerbaijan has good relationship with Iran or any other countries he mentioned. The fact remains that Azerbaijan alone couldn't resolve Artsakh conflict by force during past 24 years, 26 years, right? From 1994, the territories were under Armenian control, and Azerbaijan wasn't able to do it, because we all know if they were able to do it, they would have done it years ago. So the main factor here is Turkey and Russia and their mutual interests. That's the only breaking point that makes this that makes this happen in 2020. So I think that's the. But of course, compared to Armenia, Azerbaijan has more diversified international relations. Even though they have, main strategic partner as Turkey, they still have independent, compared to Armenia, independent foreign policy. They have more, a diverse international relationship, especially within Muslim countries. We know that Azerbaijan is different type of Muslim than Turkey, but still that doesn't affect their, relationship. Whereas Armenians, we we have more, limited international relationship. So I believe that was the main question why and I think we already addressed that question, why Armenia does not have more diverse international relationship. That's due to Armenia being colonial, a colony of Russia, and all the governments that follow each other, they all came to power through the Russia or by the Russia, and they were serving Russian interests first, and then their personal interest second, and there was no one left to serve national interests, and we have the results of 30 years of such governance.
And just a quick question, dear guest, don't you tired? Are you ready for a couple more questions?
I am ready. I can take them.
Mr. Grigoryan? Some of yes. Okay.
Well, I think we shouldn't be tiring our viewership. Therefore, we should be probably brief, and we should go through all the questions at once, maybe. But Sophia has her own questions, so we have to answer them, of course.
Okay, let's then cover just briefly questions. Sophia.
Yes, well, my questions are in line with a few questions that other viewers have also received. I think at the forefront of a lot of our minds, me as a diasporan, as a young diasporan, also as a student of international affairs, I think the question in the forefront of all of our minds is, how do we move forward from this? How can we as diasporans be involved in the future of our country, of our Armenia? And is there a candidate right now that we should be supporting, that we should be turning our attention to, that has our national interests in mind? If not, why is that the case? How can we address this? How can we change this? If there isn't, is it possible for members of the diaspora to take that role? If there are laws that bar diasporans from running for public office, to be deputies or members of the parliament, why is that the case? Is there a reason that that is illegal? Why we aren't able to take part in our own leadership and our governance? So what should be the role of diasporans moving forward? How are we supposed to be taking charge in the future of our Armenian? How can we change this?
Two great questions again. Thank you for those questions. Now I'll start from the second one. Number one, yes, there are laws that bar diasporans or even non-diasporans. I don't consider myself a diaspora, even though probably most of my conscious lifetime I've spent in the diaspora, not even in the diaspora, but abroad in the West. I don't consider myself a diasporan. I consider myself a Hayastansi. Therefore, but even I am barred from taking a great deal of offices, or occupying a great deal of offices, or being elected to the parliament. Why? Because according to the current constitution, written and implemented by Sir Sarkisyan and his cronies, the former president of Armenia, nobody not having solely Armenian citizenship, especially for the past 6 years, can get elected as president or something else. So basically, he had created a system that, let me call it this way, differently minded people, a non-colonial way of thinking people, people who would most probably not be controlled by his mindset or his party's mindset or the colonial mindset, would have or stand a chance to occupy any office at all, so that they don't change the mindset of the people. That has been the purpose. Nikol Pashinyan has called that Ser Sarkisyan Sud. However, when he came to power, that Sud fit him perfectly well, and he decided to keep it and develop it even further. And now he's using all the laws, so-called laws, implemented by Ser Sarkisyan, illegally implemented, including the constitution, which was adopted illegally because people didn't vote for it, but however it was declared passed. He kept it in place. Now it needs to be removed, abolished, and the current president, Armen Sarkisyan, has spoken at length and multiple times about the need to abolish these barriers for the diaspora and Armenians or Armenians with dual or multiple citizenships to occupy different offices, because they can contribute a great deal of things to Armenia. But that is still a very difficult issue, because the regime is still in power and because the constitution is still in place. The first question, what was the first question in one sentence?
Oh, is there a candidate that
yeah.
we should be?
Yeah, there is. Well, I would answer it this way: not a person, but there is actually a power, a candidate power, which is even better, because in Armenia, the whole political system has always been built. Even now, it is built around personalities, around personas, around single people who create parties or who are financed by somebody else, some foreign forces, some internal forces, some financial circles, notably oligarchs. And parties are formed around these people. Almost every single party, besides perhaps Dashnaksutsum, has been formed or is operating around single leaders and people. If these people die or go away, the party will crumble. That's what happens with Artur Bagdasaryan's Orinats Yerkir party. He quit politics, and then the party is no more. I mean, no word about that party. While that party at some point was artificially pretty powerful. Now, what is the party or the parties? There is a group of parties and independent people united in one political movement that, again, I spoke about it a couple of minutes ago, is called National Democratic Axis, which in Armenian sounds like Azgain Ժողովրդավարական Bever. And in my deepest belief, that is the only political power that bears and carries national ideas, that is not anti-Russian, but that is for the balance of forces, but that understands the threats coming from Russia, that is seeking a wider partnership for Armenia, that is for dignified relationship with Russia and decolonization of Armenia, and which has people whose reputation is not stained by not being with being part of former regimes or participating in any dirty bag deals like the current regime has with the previous regimes. Nothing like that. These are people, intellectuals, who are true patriots of the Armenian people. That's the only power, if you ask me. Now, to divide that field and to divide the axis and to shift some electorate away from the true national forces, many forces or many parties or many political powers are being created right now at this moment inside Armenia that bear the name national or that claim to be national or even nationalistic in order to drive away some of the possible voters and following from the truly national side, which is, or that is, the National Democratic Axis, Ազգային ժողովրդավարական Bever. In my belief, that is the only and single power, political power, that is capable of correcting things in Armenia and putting it up on its feet again.
Yes, I would agree mostly with the assessments, and I think that's only a major consolidation of people and powers in Armenia right now who is capable to make some changes. Because as I said, now people have only two, visible alternatives due to propaganda: is the current government or the former governments. So between these two, past and current, we need to find national, grounds to resolve issues, because none of these two are alternatives really. They are mutually supporting each other as an alternative. And as far as the second question, which was related to, can you remind me briefly?
Diasporans taking part in.
I think diaspora needs to be more involved in informational level, and not only at the times of crisis. We all know that when there is a war or some, catastrophe with Armenians, then everyone is trying to get involved. But we need to be involved in day-to-day, at least informational level. And as far as to get involved in, governance, etc., as it was explained, the law and constitution would not allow even citizens who live just for a short period of time outside of the country, even that have only one citizenship, only Armenian citizenship, they won't be able to go. But that laws needs to be changed. Everyone understand that. And I think that will be one of the first actions that any national government that will come to power will do. And as a diaspora, I think diaspora needs to demand that right, the right of voting, to be revived, because as we know, that right was in constitution before Robert Kocharyan removed that from constitution. So actually Armenian citizens residing abroad had the right to participate in election. That right needs to be revived, and people needs to demand that. People who live outside the country needs to demand that. Demand from who? Demand from anyone that they deal, any level of government official that they deal with, embassy and anyone else they will deal. And they need to get involved.
At least requiring from diaspora, just remember that all presidents, the former presidents, governor, when they came to United States, whatever, outside of Armenia, everyone knew that they are, let's say, bandits. They are not Democrats. They are punishing people. But just remember how they were just welcoming those people here in US. They betrayed real people in Armenia. The real people who were suffering from those governments.
The diasporan leaders, yes.
Yes, diaspora leaders, what they did, they betrayed the like normal people, average people. They were expecting support from the diaspora, and what the diaspora leaders did.
But let's make the record clear. Dashnaks were in coalition with Ser Sarkisyan government, with Bhargava Chayastan, Dodi Gago Kusakutsun, and they were part of the government that was stealing from the people, that was corrupt government, and the same wing of that Dashnak party here in the United States, which had different shapes and forms. They were the one who were welcoming Ser Sarkisyan when he was visiting United States and etc. So yeah, I don't think that's a diaspora in large that was supporting, but Dashnaktsyn played its own role during the period of regime of Ser Sarkisyan in supporting Ser Sarkisyan, including all the actions that we talk today, including that action that lead to this war and to the loss of the territories. We need to be very specific about the parties that were involved in prior governments, and we need to call everything by its names.
But it's not only Dashnaktsyn. Just generally, we have this problem in diaspora. We know that very well. The photo ops, the photo opportunities, the medals that cost nothing but were granted and awarded to diasporan leaders just to bribe them, have played their role. Just the feeling of a few nobodies with a lot of money to feel close to the power centers in Armenia has made them ignore the terrible nature of all the regimes of Armenia, including the current one. The matter of the fact is that even right now there are diasporan leaders or a lot of diasporans who still support this traitor because for just the fact that he is still the de facto leader of the country, even though he doesn't control the people. He controls the political power somehow, somewhat, thanks to the treasonous military leadership that he controls. So, I mean,
There is
listen,
always going to be people who will support people in
yeah,
power just because
talking
they want
about
to.
diaspora, we should understand that diaspora by itself, honestly said, if we confess, if we make an honest confession, sometimes, not always, but sometimes has very doubtful quality in terms of certain groups or populations. And diaspora is not a unified thing. It's not an entity that is unified or that is one single thing. It's a very multi-level, generational, multi-grade type of structure that's not really well structured. And those that have money, that have resources, that have influence, have most often, almost 90%, figuratively said, supported all the regimes in Armenia, regardless whether they knew they were corrupt or they truly believed. No, they have done that because it has been a comfortable thing and because that was a chance for them on personal and on group level to feel important and valued by a state actor, by the leadership of the state, of the country, right? So this is something tragic that should be addressed as well. And I think the next Armenian government that should be a national patriotic government should create an atmosphere in which such people will not, will start to understand that photo ops, medals, or just being close to power doesn't give them any benefits anymore, that they should get involved more into Armenia. But coming to diaspora, to say the last thing is that now the focus of diaspora should not be only to help Armenia, because we saw about the maximum capacity, and the enemy saw that as well, is it's $170 million, because the 44-day war, the whole Armenian so-called powerful diaspora was able to collect, and the donations was only 170 million, which is a ridiculously small amount of money. Of course, that money was basically and essentially stolen from the diaspora, from the people of Armenia, and given to the regime to spend as they please. But that was the top of the line, the top of the capabilities and abilities of the diaspora. Therefore, diaspora should concentrate on something that they never considered truly before. It is to return to Armenia or to move to Armenia, to help the country stand on its feet, because that is the most important issue right now. Standing on the sidelines, judging, singing songs, or speaking patriotic things is not going to cut it. It's not going to be enough anymore.
What I'm expecting from diaspora, just avoid double standards, guys.
I think the takeaway home for diasporans today is we need a national government, and we need it right now. And every diasporan who understands and realizes that needs to act accordingly. That will be in the form of, intellectual support, in the form of monetary support, or in the form of, as Hayk said, to going back to Armenia and helping to organize
to exist.
What it takes
country to exist, yeah,
to bring the national government into the power and fix these things that we talked.
Do you have something more, Sophia?
Maybe last couple questions.
Something to follow up. Is this possible peacefully without the use of force, or do we need another revolution?
It is impossible, unfortunately, just judging by what's happening. It depends on what we understand by force. Force of the masses of the people is the force that I imagine and understand. Mass demonstrations, a true revolution is needed. Nothing else will cut it. This traitor, this bastard, traitor called Nikol Pashinyan is gonna stick to power endlessly as long as he hasn't destroyed the last stone standing in Armenia, as long as he doesn't see a Turkish government in Yerevan, and this is not an exaggeration, as an agent of Turkey and Azerbaijan, as somebody who most probably has sold his own country for money. This is not a conspiracy theory. there is serious evidence speaking about this unimaginable, unthinkable thing being true. And that evidence is floating in public, arena, in public domain. Is going to be sticking to power to realize what his bosses have ordered him to do in terms of destruction of Armenia and handing the country over to them. Therefore, what is the way of removing him? It's the massive mass power of Armenian people around the whole world. And of course, first and foremost, inside Armenia proper. That is the way. Of course, there have been calls for removal using different methods as well. And we know how the government reacts to these kind of things. The regime has started repressions. Notably, we see that the national hero who has fought almost 4 wars and who was critically wounded but managed to recover miraculously, the commander of the southern part of Artsakh, Vahan Badalyan, my very dear friend, he was arrested for expressing his thoughts that were actually not, of course, thoughts, but were rhetorical statements. And he released a statement yesterday saying that he's dying in custody of the National Security Agency. And I'm afraid that that may as well come true. And the people are still silent because they are deeply depressed. They don't understand that people's power and force is needed to remove the regime of the traitors if they don't want to lose the last bits of property and land and history and culture and their ancestors' graves to the enemy that's coming after all of those things. Otherwise, no. Through elections, no. Because what this traitor wants to do is to conduct the elections himself and to have them falsified. Their agenda or explanation is that, you know what, we haven't falsified the elections, we haven't rigged the elections in 2018. Why should we do that? And the answer to that demagogy is that you didn't need to do that then because you had huge support of the people who were thinking that you're doing a revolution, the country will improve. Now, when you don't have any real true support, when you're deeply hated and you see staying in power the only way of political and maybe not only political survival, you are able to do anything to falsify and to rig the elections to stay in power. Therefore, in order to be able to conduct free and open and unrigged democratic elections, we need this regime removed. This regime is not going to resign by itself. It shall and will and may be removed only by the force and power of the Armenian people, of the Armenians of the whole world, and notably of Armenia.
Just very briefly, we need just to realize that Nikol Pashinyan lost his legitimacy on November 9 by signing that announcement. And we need to also realize that he will not resign because he has unfinished work that is linked to that November 9 announcement, which is implementing all the terms of that announcement. So in other words, Russians would not let him go easily, and they want him there to finish his work. So that's why the only way to stop that process and to bring national government into power is national movement with participation of not only Armenians in Armenia, but also diaspora.
Thank you very much, dear friends. I just want to remind you that next Sunday we're going to have a guest as a Hakobyan, former ambassador in Canada. So we will have just a questions and answer format next Sunday. Thank you very much for today. This was the first time our communication with diaspora, our English speaker nation around the diaspora, not only Armenian. I hope we will repeat it in the future. Sophia?
Thank you so much. Thank you for answering my questions and the questions of all the viewers, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope I'll be able to help you again in the future.
Thank you very much
for your help, Sophia. Thank you. Good night, guys.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.